Just like dogs are man's best friend, the down dog is the world's greatest companion, posture. And what I mean by that is it's the perfect complement to the world's greatest stretch. Now, if you're thinking right now, down dog, boring, I've done thousands of these in every yoga class I've ever taken, and you're thinking about skipping this video, just wait. You've never done down dog the way I teach it. Prepare yourself for a challenge. So before we go into the practice, I want to dispel another mobility myth, and it's this. It's people think that their inability to be able to hip hinge and touch the floor, or the feeling of restricted hamstrings and achy lower back, is a result of their hamstrings being too short. That's not the case at all. Here's what's happening. As a result of us spending most of our lives in the seated position with our hip flexors in a shortened position, and the fact that one of our main psychological stress collection centers is in our hip flexors, in the psoas muscles, we have these tightened hip flexors that don't function properly. And what they do is they pull the front of the pelvis down. And when they pull the front of the pelvis down, there's a few things that happen. One of them is it pulls the back of the pelvis up, so our hamstrings are actually in this chronically lengthened position. They're being pulled out of an optimal length to function properly. Number two, when the back of the pelvis comes up, it compresses the lumbar, the lower back. So now that's being crunched together, which doesn't feel good. That's where that lower back pain and stiffness can come from. And then the third thing that happens is the pelvis pulling us down also pulls our center of gravity forward. And then in order to keep us upright, our hamstrings and lower back muscles have to fire to pull us back. So they're not short and tight. They're actually lengthened and on red alert at all times. So they're just exhausted, and so they're stiff and achy, and it restricts our ability to hip hinge and touch the floor because they're not in the proper alignment, the proper posture. So what we're gonna do is we use the world's greatest stretch to open up the hip flexors to bring the pelvis back to neutral, okay? And then we use the down dog, which looks like this. You know, you've seen it. It looks like this. We use the down dog to fire the hip flexors from this new reset pelvic position and strengthen and lengthen the lower back. So now we can actually create long-lasting change. We can put the pelvis back in alignment, so now all the joints move more freely, easily, and without pain. In the same way that if you align your steering and balance the wheels on your tire, you're gonna get a better ride. So another thing before we move into the practice that I want to dispel is about shoulder mobility, because that's a big part of what's going to happen in the down dog. The reason that your shoulders don't do better going overhead without arching your back, which is more compression, isn't just that your lats and pecs are tight holding the shoulders down, because maybe you spend a lot of time like that all the time and maybe a little too much bench press. It's that your upper back muscles are weak. The upper back muscles that pull your shoulders overhead are weak, at least in relation to the lats being tight in this position and the pecs being tight. So we're really gonna focus on that upper back activation as we push ourselves into the down dog. So the key with the down dog is that it's postural activity, okay? It's not just this position we relax into. This is going to be strength training. All real effective mobility training is really high-level strength training. So drop down with me. We're gonna go through the keys that I have for the down dog, the way I teach it. Then we're gonna go back and do a practice where we start with the world's greatest stretch to open up the hip flexors. So first thing, we're gonna start in a plank position, and do this with me. We're gonna find that neutral pelvis, and then we're just gonna take a big breath in and push the hips up, or actually lift the hips up as we push the ground overhead. And what we're gonna do here is we're going to lengthen ourselves on 3 vectors, okay? The first vector is we're gonna try to lengthen the arms out through the end of the palms. And really, I want you to think about lengthening the bottom of your shoulder blades out through the palms and lifting the ground overhead. So that's our first vector. Second vector is lengthening your spine out up to the sky through your tail. So I want you to project your spine long through the tail. And then the final vector is I want you to lengthen your legs out through the bottom of your heels. And we're going to be incredibly active in these postures, okay? So take a little break here, shake the hands out, and then we're gonna do the practice the most effective way, starting with the world's greatest stretch to open up the hip flexors, reset the posture. One other note here I wanna mention, if you can't do the down dog with the knees straight, that's just too intense, it's all good. The regression that can allow you to practice at a good level is just bending the knees, and then that will allow you to get in the position with the long, flat, straight lower back with that tail that can project to the sky, okay? So let's go ahead and now get into our real practice for the day, using these two as companions. So right foot forward, left leg back. We're gonna take 3 deep breaths in the world's greatest stretch each side, and then we're gonna go into our down dog practice, all right? So, ready, let's go. Right foot forward, left foot back. Squeeze the glute to lengthen the right leg out through the bottom of the left heel, and then elongate your right leg out through the front of the knee. And let's go ahead and project that spine and begin our diaphragmatic breathing now with 3 breaths. Here we go, deep breaths. Build the intensity of the stretch with the inhale. Lengthen your projections on the exhale. Okay, now let's go ahead and switch. Right foot back, left foot forward. Squeeze that right glute to open up the front of the right hip and lengthen the right leg out through the bottom of the right heel. And then project that left leg longer out through the end of the knee. Project the spine. And let's take 3 deep diaphragmatic breaths. Okay, left leg back. Let's go ahead and make sure that we have that pelvis in neutral, long, flat lower back, big breath in to prepare. Now, exhale and lift your hips to the sky as you lift the ground overhead. Feel that upper back engagement. And now we're really in it. And here's one of the big keys I didn't share before. I want you to be very active in your hip flexors, okay? So what that means is keeping your knees as straight as possible and keeping your lower back flat, long, and elongated out through the tail. I want you to engage your hip flexors to pull the top of your thighs into your torso, into your rib cage. Work as hard as you can to pull those thighs into your rib cage as you lengthen your legs out through the bottom of your heels. And as you lengthen your arms from the bottom of your scapulas up through your shoulders and out through your hands, lifting the floor overhead. Like I said, real mobility training is strength training. You should feel a massive amount of activation in your upper back, in the projection of your spine out through your tail, in your hip flexors, pulling the top of your thighs to your rib cage. Hang in there with me, we're still working. And then elongating those legs out through the heels. Keep working. Let's take 3 deep breaths together. Build the intensity on the inhale and get longer and more active and produce more strength on the exhale. Lift those toes. Lengthen the arms. Let's do one more for good luck. And break. Whoa. All right. So, as you can tell, that is intense. There's a lot happening there. So, I want you to carve out time to do this a couple more times. I'm gonna give you some follow along videos so you can get all my cues and do it with the right intensity, because short practice can be really powerful. As a matter of fact, the most powerful way to improve mobility, as long as it's frequent and intense. So I'll see you in the next practice. It's been a pleasure practicing with you today.